His will, I find my way. Night turns to dawn, He lights my day. In His will, my heart stays lit. I'm carried by grace. In His will.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to In His Will. My name's Debbie Bird Smith. If this is your first time here, welcome. I'm so glad that you could join us. We are reading The Son of My Will, which is a book on the life of Louisa Picaretta. So much beautiful and interesting information. Sorry, my nose is itchy. In this book. And so we've been kind of going through it a little bits at a time, plugging through this. And we are actually in chapter 8. And if you're following along in the book, we're on page 100. And I know many of you have the book and are following along in the book. I'd love to hear in the comments how you have been enjoying this, or, you know, if you've been gaining anything from this reading of this book as we've gone along. I'd also like to know, because I've been recording them and putting them out, let me know if you would like some of these to be live, so that maybe you could ask questions or we could talk about it. I'm more than happy to do that. If that's something that you know many of you would like to do. I love to hear from you in the comments. I read every comment. I usually comment back on every comment. And all I ask, if we are live, is that you be kind in the chat, and that you know, we kind of stay on task, because those of you who know me know that I'm easily distracted. So we're going to start in this section called A Crossroads of Union. And we've been talking previously about these young women that would come into Louisa's room, and she taught them lace making. And during this time that she was teaching them lace making, they would pray and they would ask. She would also teach about the divine will to these young women. And so she absolutely made the most of every moment that she was awake and communicating with people in the divine will, because we know that she fell into this very rigid, nonverbal, dead-like state. But when she was able to, boy, she was teaching, she was praying, she was, you know, we read a couple of episodes back about Mass in her room every day. And after Mass, they would have Thanksgiving for 2 to 3 hours. They would spend 2 to 3 hours in Thanksgiving for the Eucharist and the Mass. What do we give it? Good question to ask ourselves. How much time do we give in Thanksgiving after we receive the Holy Eucharist? Not enough, I'm sure, but I digress. So this section is called A Crossroads of Union. It begins, everyone considers Louisa's room to be a school of spirituality and of new experiences of prayer, like spiritually making a pilgrimage to all the churches of the world. This is how it was described. Certainly, to understand this way of life, it is necessary to step outside of our technical mindset and look at things from the point of view of the early 1900s, when industrialization begins to expand its reach, but still does not make its full impact on the traditions and customs that have been alive for centuries. And furthermore, there is still no radio or television, and obviously no internet back then. There are definitely more rosaries around than headphones. But before God, this changes little. Saint Therese said, prayer is a surge of the heart towards God, and the increase in the practice of piety is not always more pure and purifying than an act of love. In fact, another Carmelite saint, St. John of the Cross, says that one act of pure love is greater in God's eyes than all the pious works one could ever carry out. And you know, amazingly, in the writings, Jesus says something very akin to this to Louisa about one act in the divine will and the efficacy, the potency, the effect that one act in the divine will has. Because we have to remember that that one act, whatever it is, the act is insignificant. It's the intention behind the act, which is in the divine will. It's fused with all the other acts into one single act, done by Jesus, done by the divine will, the Holy Trinity, throughout eternity, past, present, and future. But, you know, we can't wrap our little pea brains around this. It's too huge. It's too big. But what we can know is that one act done in the divine will, and I believe I'm very much paraphrasing, and somebody out there correct me if I'm wrong, one act done in the divine will is greater than all the acts done by all the people over the course of history, even the saints. This is not to say that moments of prayer in Louisa's room are not a call for the rest of us to, so caught up in a million things. But let us just remember that it's not about some formal practice of piety, because everything is always shaped by love for the bridegroom. And when Louisa asked the Lord the reason for her usual state of rigid immobility, Jesus tells her that in this way, she will not be distracted by all the things going on around her. Distraction is one of the tools of the evil one. I see this happen even in my own cenacles that I do. We're talking about one thing, and somebody does something wants to talk about something completely different. He doesn't want us to talk about the divine will. He doesn't want that. Even in our piousness, we can be thrown off course if we're not. First of all, if we're not aware of how the evil one works. Because many times these things are not done maliciously. These distractions that we give way to, we don't do them maliciously. We do them out of ignorance. We do them out of inattentiveness. This is why it says to be faithful and attentive. This is why the book is called Faithful and Attentive, the handbook of living in the divine will. We have to be attentive. We have to train our minds, our hearts, our way of doing things so that it is done in the divine will. We're not distracted by these other things. All of this echoes Jesus' words to the disciples, "Come away by yourselves to a deserted place and rest a while." Or the verse from Hosea, "Therefore I will allure her and bring her into the wilderness and speak tenderly to her." Nevertheless, Louisa lives with others and is in the midst of others, and she becomes a teacher of a skill and of intimacy with God. So you see this practical side of Louisa. She's making lace. It makes money to run the household. She's teaching the young women of her village how to make money. And she's also teaching them how to live a spiritual life, to live in the divine will. This fellowship is made up of people whom Jesus has entrusted to her care, and he urges her to keep watch over them. The Lord, in fact, does not want to turn Louisa into an isolated hermit, but wants to form a crossroads of union between her and them so that they too, like Louisa, can always be around him. This is a spiritual project that, as one will see, seems to be fulfilled with the establishment of Corrado, of the house consecrated to the divine will, which will house the little daughters of the divine will of Jesus, like a small army of souls. But even after many years, all those who come to know her spirituality will be, in Louisa's heart, the children of the fiat, meaning the great family of the children of the divine will. We are the children of the divine will. Now we know that there became there is a there was an order of nuns there in Corrado. We know that now we have the Benedictine Daughters of the Divine Will, and orders in the Divine Will are popping up, monasteries, monks, priests, brothers. Those who come to her are not just friends, however. Sometimes people show up who want to look at her, test her, and question her, and others are fairly demanding religious men and women. They want to challenge her. They want to question her. They're like, who is this woman? Who is this really kind of, forgive me, Lord, this little freak of nature who seems to be dead? And have these incredible encounters with Jesus, flying all over the universe. She's always kind to the priests, and she remembers the beauty of seeing them transformed in Jesus while they celebrate Mass. She recalls the graces received during Mass, which is the foundation of our religion for her because it keeps the memory of the redemption alive. And it speaks about the suffering Jesus endured for us and his continual state of victim in the Holy Eucharist. In the Eucharist, she perceives the death of Christ, but also the guarantee of his living and true presence among us through the action of the priest. It is also true, however, as will be seen further on, that with some priests, their early curiosity is gradually replaced by their personal involvement and dedication to the doctrine contained in her writings. This is what happens, in fact, with Father Annibale de Francia, Rogationist Father Pantaleone Palma, Benedictine Father Ludwig Beda, and Jesuit Father Gennaro Barcali, who comes from Naples to visit her. Because of the deep mutual respect that emerges, Louisa entrusts Father Barcali with a plan to promote a renewal of priestly life. This plan would involve setting up homes where diocesan priests could share communal life in their own cities and learn a way of living that was detached from personal and economic interests. They were to be homes for the renewal of the faith established according to the rule of the oratory of St. Philip Neri. What was killing the priest at the time was, above all, his attachment to his own family. This attachment would arouse in his heart the darkness of interest in worldly things and corruption. Taking off all the luster from the splendor of the dignity of the priesthood would make him become the talk of the town, the fodder for gossip. Instead, the priest must leave all of his possessions behind with his family, keeping only personal things with him. Everything needed to support him must be provided by the church. Therefore, everything he may own must be used for supporting him, for increasing the works for the glory of the Lord and for the good of the people. The aim is that men who are consecrated to the priesthood would no longer serve God only as a cover, when their real aim in life being to take care of their families, their nephews, instead of taking care of Jesus, his honor, his glory, and the holiness of his own life. In fact, when a priest does not dedicate himself only to the glory of God and the duties of his own ministry, it is for the Lord like a dislocated bone that pains Jesus, the priest, and the people. In fact, the race to receive particular rewarding assignments is often the source of conflict among priests. Priests wanted good assignments. They wanted to be in good areas. They wanted to live good lives. They wanted comfort. We see this. We see this in the church. We see what happens. When we look at popes of the past, nephews of the Pope became the next pope, or they were nuncios, or they were somewhere, they were granted some high position in the church. This renewal of the faith movement was to put priests back into the mindset that they needed to be, which was one of servant. Leaving your family behind is difficult. It's very difficult. To live in community is difficult. But priests were called to live a very special kind of life. They're still called to live a very, very special kind of life. I guess it's good to know that this is nothing new. This is not a new battle that we see. If the flock is to be saved at a time when the faith is losing strength, then saving the shepherds is indispensable. This is the task of the bishop, who must promote these homes for priests in his diocese and accept seminarians who display a willingness to live there once they are priests. After all, if the bishops do not make the shepherds safe, how can the flock ever be saved? The project will never get off the ground in Corrado, and Father Gennaro will go through many moral and spiritual trials. Rather, he will decide to offer himself as victim to our Lord, following Luisa's path. Other priests who remember their visits with Luisa are the servant of God, Father Bernardo Sartori, a Camboni missionary, Dominican Father Pio Scagnamiglio, and Father Fernando Cento, who was made a bishop in 1922 and archbishop in 1926, and appointed to serve as apostolic nuncio to Venezuela, Belgium, Portugal, and other countries, and finally created a cardinal in 1958. Father Annibale let his discovery be known to a number of his friends, who will begin to write to and visit Luisa. Among them are servant of God Father Eustachio Montemuro, who, with Father Bracali, founded the missionary sisters of the Sacro Costado, and servant of God Father Antonino Salina, founder of the Congregation of the Sisters of Reparation to the Most Sacred Heart of Jesus. Because of their mutual friendships with Father Annibale, many Capuchins held Luisa in high esteem and visited her. Of them we will mention Capuchin Fathers Isia da Trigiano, Daniel da Trigiano, Father Giovanni de Bellis, Father Terenzio di Campa Salentina, Father Guglielmo di Barletta, Father Salvatore de Corrado, and many others. Many of these priests celebrated Mass in Luisa's home and corresponded by letter with her. Obviously, the archbishops of Trani visited her as well, as many priests were who were from the local area and beyond. Among her most regular guests were Father Felice Torelli, Father Francesco Bevilacqua, Father Luca Mazzilli, Father Peppino Ferrara, Father Michel Samarelli, a noted theologian from Bari, then the Vicar General, and Jesuit Father Raffaele Micara. Finally, many others knew Louisa from her published writings, and even if they never met her, they wrote letters to her. Something that is also remembered about Louisa is her devotion to the souls in purgatory and her particular attention to the souls of deceased priests. She would teach everyone not only to pray for them, but to ask them for their help. This is a significant revelation. First of all, let me apologize to all of you out there who are Italian for the butchering of all of these names. I don't speak Italian. But we see that this extraordinary life that Louisa was living was drawing a lot of attention. It was drawing attention from priests. It was drawing attention from clergy from all over. And they wanted to meet her. They wanted to talk to her. They wanted to learn from her. And it went from being a challenge to her, to challenge her, to question her, to sort of, put her out there on the chopping block, so to speak, to becoming devoted to her, to following her, to learning from her. And the church grew out of this movement. It grew out of this transformation of these priests. Pray every day that God will send us more and more priests in the divine will, more and more orders of priests and monks and nuns in the divine will. We need priests who are knowledgeable about the divine will, because there's so much misinformation, distorted teaching. Pray, pray, pray with all of your hearts for discernment, to be able to discern from all the people that are teaching falsely, because they're a growing group. Teaching our church teachings falsely, teaching the divine will falsely. Lord knows I don't claim to be perfect in my teaching. I have a lot to learn. I've been studying this for, going on 10 years. On this channel, believe me, take Dan Shields' word over mine any day of the week. I recognize my weakness. I recognize my lack, but we all have lack. This is so far beyond us. This is so far beyond our little pea brains. But God gives us the grace. Pray. Pray for understanding. Pray for enlightenment. Pray for the grace. Some people are infused with these knowledges much more quickly than others. There's a lot to take into our little teeny tiny brains, our little teeny tiny souls. Our souls have to expand to be able to embrace it. Only God can enlighten us. Believe me, only God, only the Holy Trinity, only the divine will can enlighten us. Words that come out of my mouth, words that come out of Dan's mouth, words that come out of, Derek's mouth, or Father Dom. These are all the words of the Holy Spirit, which are the words that are worth something. the teachers that I know that are, I believe, very good, holy teachers that I follow, that I learn from, are people of deep prayer. You may see what we do in these few minutes that we do whatever. Believe me, the preparation of soul and mind is much different. In some ways, it's a very solitary act. Pray for the teachers. Pray for the priests. Pray for Mother Gabriel. Pray for Father Bruno. Pray for Sam Kadori. Pray for Dan O'Connor. Pray for these wonderful teachers that we've been given. In our own way, in our own little way, I kind of like to think of us having our own little community. And I need help, when I need encouragement, or I need direction. I go to people that I know and trust in the divine will. Unfortunately, there are many that I don't. Pray for discernment. Pray for discernment. You know, I'm a little bit outspoken sometimes. That may lose me some subscribers. I don't care. Those of you who know me know I don't care. God will afford this channel the number of people who are meant to find it and meant to follow it. That's kind of my attitude. I do my best to make sure that what's said and what's done here is, for a better word, legit. Those of you who know me and have watched me for a long time, you know that I am, there's no pretense here. Pray for humility. Your pride will trip you up worse than anything. Read. Study. Jesus said you reap what you sow. This is sowing. Studying is sowing. Praying is sowing. Learning is sowing. You can't give what you don't possess. Strive to possess more knowledge, more faith, more grace. And get it whatever way the church has given you to get it. Don't let anybody tell you you don't need to go to confession anymore. You don't need to pray a rosary anymore. Don't let anybody tell you that, please. I'm begging you. Because I've heard people in the divine will say that, or supposedly in the divine will. Read, pray. Do what's in the book. Do what's in the book. That's why we're reading this book. So that we can see that Louisa was a real person. She wasn't some weird old wacko. She was divinely chosen and divinely guided. And you are divinely chosen. And you should want to be divinely guided because you have been chosen for the divine will. Make no mistake, you were chosen. If you're watching this video, there's purpose. You were chosen. if you're seeking to learn about the divine will or curious about the divine will or just wonder, whatever, you were chosen. Make no mistake. Whether you do what you've been asked to do, what you've been chosen to do, that's up to you. You do have a will. Jesus tells us that the best use of our will is to lay it down, surrender it. One of the things that was always taught and written in 12-step material when an addict is trying to change his life. This is a quote. It is when we begin to conform our will with God's that we begin to use it rightly. This is before anybody knew about the divine will, I can tell you that, in my circle anyway. And I would go so far as to say, it is when we lay our will down to live in the divine will that we begin to use it rightly. That's how we use our will rightly. We surrender it. Because we have a choice. We have a choice. Self-will is strong. I don't have my cup with me. My Inhiswill cup that says, help me, Jesus. My self-will is running riot again. I'm self-will run riot. When I'm not living in the divine will, when I am not living when I choose to live in my own will, I could be just self-will run riot. I can go off on a tangent. I can go off on a do whatever. And justify it in my little twisted mind sometimes. So this is what we have. This is what we have here to teach us how to think rightly. Because, in this world that we live in, boy, they messed up the way we think. When you think that it's okay to assassinate a 31-year-old man, the father of 2 very young children, because he spoke the truth boldly, thinking is wrong. It's wrong. Things are twisted. I always say everything's upside down and backwards. Everything in this world is upside down and backwards. We have to turn it right side up. And thank God for the divine will, because it's the only will of God that can turn it around. Our will is too deformed by sin. Can we stop sinning? Yeah, we can. We can stop sinning. And the divine will help you to stop sinning. It really will. The divine will give you peace. This last week, I've known that I've really been, challenged. Because my peace was disturbed. But there is also something to righteous anger. If you're not angry about what happened to Charlie Kirk, if you're not angry about little boys, little children getting shot up when they went to mass before they started their school day, if you're not angry about a woman just walking into a train and sitting down on a seat and getting murdered in front of a bunch of people who did nothing, what's wrong with us? It's the evil one. That's what's wrong with us. He slivers in the cracks, people. You have to seal up the cracks. Don't let him in. So I've been regaining my peace. I hope you're in peace. I pray that you're in peace. I pray for you every day. I do pray for you every day. I ask you, please, please pray for me. God knows I need it. I need it. I need it as bad as anybody does. It's hard to live in this world right now. So much evil. Call on Saint Michael. Don't worry about myself. I know that I am divinely protected. And you may say, well, what about Charlie? Was Charlie divinely protected? Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was. When I talk about being divinely protected, I'm talking about being protected in the only way that really matters. That's our soul. These bodies are just, they're going to go. Nobody's going to get out of this world alive. But our souls. This is what Louisa, she's lying in bed, can't get out of bed. She confined herself to bed willingly. She complained about it, and Jesus said, well, if you don't want to do it, don't do it. Okay. And Louisa said, no, I want to do your will. I want to live in the divine will. He said, okay, and that's what you need to do. We may not always like it. Louisa didn't always like it. Trust me. But she loved Jesus. She loved God. She wanted to live in his will. She wanted to do whatever it was he wanted. She wanted to give whatever of herself he wanted. Well, he wants all of us. He wants every part of us. He wants all of us. He wants the part that really matters, which is our soul. And the evil one says, no. I want that soul. I want that soul. I don't want you to win, God. I want that soul. Don't let him have it. Fight with everything you've got. Don't let him have it. And if you're living in the divine will, you're protected. None of us knows that when or how we're going to be called by God. But when I am, I want to be with him. I want to be with him. I want to be with God, because that is when I will be complete. Maybe I won't have a body anymore, but I will be complete. So, enough. The next one, the next chapter is chapter 9 on the first publications of a writing. So now when we, our next section here on Son of My Will is going to be about what happened when these writings that she's, all this stuff she's writing down late at night, I would say Louisa may have been in bed 24/7, but that didn't mean she got a lot of sleep. She was a busy woman. Her day started at 6 in the morning. She was writing late into the night. Late into the night. Sometimes her soul really didn't get any rest because, when she fell into this state, this death-like state that she went into, anytime she was spending all that time with Jesus. She was spending that time with Jesus. She bilocated all over the universe with Jesus. So it's very hard for us to wrap our little pea brains. But she would write late at night. She would write down what Jesus had taught her, told her that day. And he told her, don't leave anything out. When you read the writings, you'll see where, occasionally I'll be like, you left this out. You have to write it down. And she said, I don't want to write that down. It's too private. I don't care. You tell everybody everything. Because I want them to have it too. I know you consider it just between me and you, but no, I want them to have this knowledge as well. They need to understand. When Jesus was giving all these messages, all of these teachings, all of this time to Louisa, he was doing it for you. He was doing it for you, for me, so that we would have these writings, 100 years later. And they'll be here 200 years later and 300 years later, as long as this God chooses to keep this earth. So, next time, chapter 9, the first publications of a writing. As I said, if you would like to leave a comment, please. And if you would like to have any of these be live, we can do some of them live. Frankly, it's in some ways it's easier for me to do it early in the day and record them. As with anyone, my energy wanes as the day goes on. But if you want to do some live and do some in the evening, or would like to do some, on the weekend, whatever you want, let me know. Let me know what it is you want. Also, I'd encourage you to visit my new website, Inhiswilldbs, Podia, Podia.com. And it's not finished yet, so it may look a little unfinished, but I'm working on it. And also like the video, if you will, and share the video, if you will. And then there's this little join button over here. And if you feel led to, hit the join button and maybe contribute a little bit. Sow a little bit. We reap what we sow. And we sow in prayer, we sow in study, we sow in finances, we sow in money. You might want to sow a little bit. I tried to make it so that it was pretty much affordable for anyone. But if you can't afford it, okay. You can't afford a few dollars a month, that's okay. If you can, I'd encourage you to do so, because you will reap a benefit. You will be blessed. And also many other people will be blessed because of your contribution. But if for whatever reason you can't or won't, please pray for the channel. Pray for me. Pray for all the people who are legitimately trying to teach the divine will, spread the divine will, make people aware of the divine will. And pray for those who aren't. Please pray for them. God help them. If we spread false doctrine, I'm telling you, we're going to pay a price. Maybe not in this life, but we will pay a price. Know your faith. I keep threatening to do some catechism on this channel. And I think if we start doing anything on the Catechism of the Catholic Church, we're going to start with prayer. There's a whole section in the Catechism on prayer. I hope you own a catechism. So, until next time, God bless you. God keep you. Keep praying. Keep reading. Keep studying. Keep surrendering your will. And always remember to stay in His will. Love you.